a good world, you know me say.
Umoja ni nguvu, utengano udhaifu, tukisimama jitoe uvivu, upweke ni ubabaifu, brother utakwama. Kuwa mbali mbali sio kitu kizuri, inaleta upweke, hakuna jeuri. Ni rahisi kupata msaada ukiwa na wenzako, wekaka usimtenge dada, itangamana nawe.
Guys, excuse me. Guys, can you enter and please take your seat? We're going to start in 2 minutes. Guys, enter, get your seat. We're going to start in a few. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please to enter, take your seat.
Okay.
You can get inside with the food too. Alrighty. Thank you so much. Yay! All right. We're starting.
Utengano udhaifu, tukisimama jitoe uvivu, upweke ni ubabaifu, brother utakwama. Kuwa mbali mbali sio kitu kizuri, inaleta upweke, hakuna jeuri. Ni rahisi kupata msaada ukiwa na wenzako, wekaka usimtenge dada, itangamana nawe, kuna wengine wataitika, nawe shikamana naye, itaondoa kusononeka.
You better know, let's be happy and love one another.
Itaondoa kusononeka.
That is over. What are we gonna do to make a change? So I'm tryna get over.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm Stephen Adams. I'm honored to have a conversation here with Mr. Richard Lawson, who, you know, to say he is an actor, a producer, an entrepreneur, an activist is really not enough. He's a visionary, too. And this guy, I mean, even that is not a word, I think, that completely encompasses all that you do and all that you've done. You've had a fascinating life, and you have a fascinating future ahead. So let's maybe start at the beginning and talk about your origins as an artist and the kind of path you've led through life.
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful to be here and really honored that you are the one that's interviewing me. This is a new relationship that we have just created with Theo as well, and I couldn't be more excited about the present and the future. So how did I become an artist? I didn't really plan on being an actor. I went to college, I played football, I was going to be a lawyer. And so
That's kind of the opposite of being an artist in a way.
Well, it's a performance. It's performance art. You know, being a lawyer is performance art to a degree. So I was in college. I dropped out to go into business, to be an entrepreneur. The military discovered that I dropped out. I got drafted. I went to Vietnam. I was there for a year. I was a combat medic. I found out that I could get out 3 months early and go to college if I went to college. So the shortest distance was with a community college, a junior college. I went there, and I said, well, I want to be a lawyer. There's nothing at junior college that's actually going to take me in that direction except debate. So I joined the debate team, became a state champion, undefeated. The drama coach asked me would I want to do this musical called Golden Boy. I did. And it was in the middle of that musical that I had a revelation that this is what I was put on this earth to do, that this was my purpose. And
But
from
excuse me, I want to interrupt here. How did you go from being on the debate team to being in a musical? Because that is a bit of a leap.
well, because I was, I joined this woman asked me to be in this reader's theater, and I did. And then from that, I went into forensics, which was competitional speech, and then I became the state champion in that. I was undefeated in that. Then the drama coach, based upon my speech acumen, wondered whether I would be interested in being in this musical. And I said, why not? And it was from that, studying dancing, singing, acting, that that it influenced me to stay in the business. So I became an actor. And from that day to this one, I have been on vacation for 50-some years.
They do say that if you do what you love, it never is a day of work.
Never a day of work. And I've done what I've loved, and this is what I do, and I don't need a lot of sleep because I'm so excited every day to get up to do what it is that I love.
So let's talk about the adventure you're saying you're starting back in the late 60s, and you're still thriving to this day. That's an achievement unto itself.
Well, it's a marathon, you know, but because I was running a race that I wanted to run, it wasn't work, you know. When I got into business, you know, it was really kind of a desert in terms of opportunities for black actors or actors who happen to be black. And so the parts, you know, in theater, yes. In film and television, there were the stereotypical kind of parts. There was black exploitation, as they called it. And I got some of those jobs. You know, my first job was Scream, Blackula, Scream, where I played a vampire. And then, you know, and I did Sugar Hill and other movies that was of the day. But you know, but I recognized early on that the path to my own destiny was one that I was going to have to create myself. I couldn't depend on the industry to do it for me. So, so I became an entrepreneur. I created, I produced plays, plays that I was in. I started doing short films and really carving out my own path, you know.
I want to take a moment to put a circle around what you're saying, because, you know, something that comes through is like this attitude that you have, this positive attitude of saying, okay, this door isn't open, so I'm creating my own door.
Right.
That's not something every creative shares. We have a lot of people who suffer because they either don't see that it's possible or don't try to make it possible. They wait for someone else to validate them.
Right, right. Well,
Where did that come from in you?
You know, it's an interesting thing. When I went to Africa a couple of years ago, to Ghana, year of the return, celebrating 400 years of the return, and I went into the slave dungeons, and I had just recently discovered that I was 30% Ghanaian, 30% Nigerian and 20% Ghanaian. So in being in the dungeon, I recognized that I was standing on my own DNA. And I connected that to my great grandfather, who bought himself out of slavery and then went back and bought his brothers and sisters out of slavery. And then I looked at my mother, who worked 16 hours a day for 16 years, and I recognized the resilience in terms of people being able to survive the impossible. And I had always known that, but that was a confirmation for me that in terms of being able to survive, and as I like to say, the ability to turn chicken shit into chicken salad, that it's up to me to make things go right and up to me to determine my own destiny. and not be at the effect of my fate, which is oftentimes created by external conditions. I'm responsible for my own condition. Everything that happens to me, I'm responsible for it. And so therefore the condition of the business was not bigger than me. I always, when I walked in those rooms, I knew that my job was to change that person's mind and to get him to see me as I saw myself.
I love
And
it.
so therefore there was never any stop in me. You know, no is a motivator. No turns me on. And so therefore I'm gonna make it go right. If I come upon the China wall, I'm gonna figure out how to go over it, how to go under it, how to go around it, or how to go through it, using my relationship map. Who do I know that has a bomb? Who do I know that has a plane, or a helicopter, or a hot air balloon, or a caravan to go around it, or dig a tunnel under it? And so it's been just no stop.
I love that, and I love the fact that you're finding that resilience and that value in the Black American experience, because so many of us are taught to look at that as something that we should devalue or forget.
Right.
But in actuality, you're finding strength in it, and resilience, and also probably the reality is like, as difficult as it is to carve out a creative career, it is not as hard as being a slave or surviving the Middle Passage. So,
Right.
by perspective, we are in one of the most elite and least necessary but most necessary kind of areas in the world.
No question about it. It's really is in terms of understanding who you are, and really understanding and placing a value on yourself, maybe even greater than it actually is. In terms of what, when you look at what's possible, you have to understand that it's going to take a Herculean effort to get there. I've always heard people talk about the struggling actor. I resent the concept of a struggling actor. Challenged? Yeah. But a challenge is something that you can figure out how to overcome. To struggle is to mean that
It's almost like drowning.
Yeah. You're at effect to it,
And you're on
as
your way.
opposed to being at a cause over it.
Okay. See, again, what I'm getting from this is like you are always leaning towards finding and achieving and maintaining and growing power, personal power. And I think to go further, I mean, I think as Black people, wherever we are in the diaspora, we're all decolonizing ourselves on a regular basis. So part of colonization requires that your mind be subject to another person's values.
Right.
And so I love hearing what you're saying. And I think that's applicable to anybody, really, at the end of the day. I mean, whether you're talking about a woman's struggles or, as we discussed yesterday, different abilities, all these things have been sort of suppressed over the centuries.
Right, exactly. Which is one of the motivations for me to direct the film that I directed, Black Terror, which is about revolution. And revolution in the sense of, not military revolution. That's not a war that can be won. We don't have the material, the firepower, the technology to fight that battle. This is not Algiers where, we can, or Afghanistan or Vietnam when they are tunnels and you can hide and territorially you can take advantage, but it's not that. They control where we live, in terms of the communities, they can surround that and all. That's not a war we can win. But the war and the real revolution has to be in terms of the way we think. It has to be fiscal, it has to be political, it has to be social, it has to be spiritual revolution now more than ever. Because at the bottom line, when you look at the erosion of every advancement made for Black people, affirmative action, Roe versus Wade, all the other things that's being eroded right now, we have to retool our thinking and almost go back to a time when we were segregated, so that because when we were segregated, we owned our own banks. Our doctors were in the neighborhood. The lawyers were there, plumbers, the vendors. There was community. There was trust because we had to. And then when we assimilated, we lost that. We lost a sense of legacy, history. We no longer have 3 generations in the family, so grandparents are the ones that teach you about your history. They're not there. And so we have to rediscover that. And that really comes out of the whole sense of resilience that, you know, I reconnected with when I went to Ghana and have understood in my family all along that when I look at the future, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, my question is, well, what's going to happen to our children? You know, what's going to be there in terms of their survival? So I guess what I'm really doing is using my art as a form of activism to be at cause over my own and our own destiny. And that's something that I recognized early on as an artist, that I had to be control of my own destiny and not get in line and hope that somebody invite me to their party. It's like we have to create our own.
And you could spend a lifetime doing that.
You can spend a lifetime doing that. And there's not, you know, when you're waiting in line for somebody to say, okay, you can come in, you know, it's like it doesn't really give you a lot of sense of self.
Right.
You know?
So talk to us about the organization you have that is producing all these things. You're doing all sorts of very interesting, dynamic things with your business.
My wife and I created a foundation, if you will, a nonprofit 501c3 called Waco Theater Center. Waco stands for Where Art Can Occur. And in the 6 years of our existence, we've done some pretty amazing things. You know, we've created partnerships with other companies. We mentor over 100 kids. To see the change in these young people is really just amazing. Where a lot of these kids at one point couldn't see beyond the edge of their zip code, now they're able to imagine and dream and to see what's possible in the world and become conscious and really inclusive and really understanding the sense of sisterhood and brotherhood. We do full-on productions. We're partnering in a production in Watts now with Marty and the Hands That Could, in co-production with a Watts company. We have an installation at the theater with, I think, 16 female artists, which has gotten great reviews in the LA Times. We're producing this film, Black Terror, which is about revolution, which is based upon a play that was written 50 years ago by Richard Wesley. It was about revolution 50 years ago, and every word in that, nothing has been changed, and it's relevant today. Most nonprofits are reactionary groups that there's a problem and you try to help it and raise it up. I like to think of Waco as being as a proactive group that sees a problem and tries to get in front of it to prevent it from happening. Like the purpose of Black Terror the purpose of this is to get Black people engaged in conversation about our own responsibility for ourselves. We take 100% of our resources and we give it to others. Money stays in our community for 6 hours. So we give 100% of our resources away and we blame them for 100% of our problems. I just got through playing Al Sharpton, Reverend Al
Yes.
Sharpton, which was a great time, about a true story about Sean Bell, who got shot at 50 times and killed on his wedding day in 2006. And I play Al Sharpton, who had a big part in that. And Al said, you know, there was a time when I was really mad at God, saying, how can you let 400 years of suffrage on black people? How can you do that, God? And he said, he pondered that for the longest time until it occurred to him that even the Bible says faith without works is dead. So what are the works? When you consider Ukraine and you consider, you know, Toussaint Louverture and you consider other countries who fought for their freedom, well, what is our fight? We generate $2 trillion a year. That's power. That's the 10th largest country in the world compared to.
Now you're speaking of black Americans.
Black Americans. Yeah. And so for us to be able to take that money, having a sense of consciousness, changing the way we think, instead of looking at Gucci, Poochie, blah, 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 in terms of being,
right.
That we go and spend and we buy, that.
Or if we're going to buy it, let's create a black luxury brand, because I still have yet to see something of that stature in the world yet.
Right, creating a black luxury brand, creating a sense of building infrastructure, businesses, teaching young people to be grocers, so that we're not going to the Korean grocery store. No strike on Koreans. They established as their business, but there's no black grocery stores. And so how do we establish that? How do we create a black book where we are aware of where black businesses are, like the Green Book in the old days,
And I have a question for you. I mean, what do you think about creating a dialogue of this sort between Africa and its diaspora?
I think it's an incredible and important dialogue to create, and for us to understand the symbiotic relationship between Africa and African Americans. I think it's important going forward, because I think one of the most important things is that, well, if we don't, and we look 20 years out, so according to Florida, to show this film in a HBCU in Florida is a felony.
But explain why, because not everybody here is maybe aware of what's going on in the United States. Let's back up a little bit and talk about this. They'll call it conservative movement in Florida, which is also very contagious in the rest of the United States.
It is.
And talk about what they're trying to do and what this means.
So the governor of Florida is passing laws that basically says to teach African American history in Florida is illegal. As a matter of fact, it's a felony to teach it in schools. He's expanding upon that and saying that
we can't talk about Latinos or Native Americans either.
Is that?
Yes, because they don't want to talk about the original genocide that cleared the lands. They don't want to talk about the wars with Latins, and they certainly don't want to talk about the exploitation of black people, because this might make the children uncomfortable.
Of course. Which is to ignore history.
Well, you should be uncomfortable, because this is the reality of history, and if you don't do something about it, the struggle's never going to change. So it is a very sick idea that you can legislate the truth away,
right,
and make the rest of us shut up about the facts. And it's like, we're not going to do the same things to you that were done to us, because if we did, it would have been done a long time ago.
Right.
People just want to live properly.
Want to live properly. And so in that regard, I think, in terms of, we have to have a clarion call, if you will, the trumpets that alert people to conversation and discussion and dealing with the reality of looking at Florida and the actions that they're taking. If we don't proactively take care of ourselves in a certain kind of way, look years out, and what's that going to be like? What are our children going to miss out on?
Yeah, or worse, because we're talking about something where they're almost legislating historically black colleges out of existence. and so on. And this was, these things existed in response to the absence of any concern for people being educated
Right.
on a higher level.
Exactly. You know, so, I mean, that's part of my motivation, and I recognize it, and became very crystal clear when I went to Africa, which I would hope that every black American would take that trip, just so that you can get a sense of how different it is in terms of the conditions, in terms of history, in terms of where you came from. It's something like going home that settles something in your soul, where you recognize yourself to a degree, and then how that translates in terms of how you go forth in the world.
A question for you, because I mean, I've heard people speak of this, and I have not personally experienced it. Watch that. We need to keep you here intact. But you know, I've heard people say that there is friction between Africans from the Caribbean and the United States and Latin America and people from the continent, because there's resentment that they were sold out by their brethren. How do you feel about that statement, or even do you agree with it or disagree with it, or do you think there's an issue to be solved?
You know, I think everything. You know, I think communication is the solvent for everything, and I think in terms of you know, a lot of what information that is imparted through social media, through the media of any kind, can be misinterpreted. And I think when you put people in a room and you start talking about the realities of things, and you get human beings to engage, I think a lot of the ignorance and the misquoting and all of those things can be brought and flattened with communication. And I think that kind of dialogue is necessary.
So how did you evolve from an actor into a producer? I mean, I understand the theme and the motivation that you have. It's been very clear that you don't wait for other people to open the door.
Right. Well, being a producer was almost, you know, something that was necessary. I recognized that I didn't have control of, you know, the industry and the things that were written. I know that when I came up as an actor, when I read a script, my sensibilities went to the lead character, not number 57 or 68 on the call sheet, which was usually, you know, stereotypical in some kind of way. And so I knew that in order for me to play the roles that I should be playing and that I was right for, that I had to create it.
Right.
That I had to go and find it, and I had to write it myself, or I had to produce it. And so it became a natural outgrowth of my own dream and my own vision for myself, and not to accept the vision that the industry put on me. You know, here's an interesting thing. There's only one real group in the Screen Actors Guild, and all other groups are diversity groups. Black men, black women, white women. White men is the only group. Everybody else is a diversity group.
Okay, so then, yeah. So they're the normal, and the rest of everything else is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. They're the featured. They're featured, but they're not starring in terms of just conceptually.
Right. Which is essentially the basis of Western culture.
Right. Exactly.
And that's just a reflection of it.
Yeah.
So this is what we're up against, is that this is the normal and the rest is peripheral.
Right. And I'm not mad at it, because of the fact that I understand it, that's the way it is, but that's not the way that I have to operate on my own. I don't have to buy that concept and that reality in order for me to have a full, complete, satisfying career. You know what I mean? That's based upon my control. I'm not at effect to the business. I'm in control of the business.
But this is absolutely brilliant. I mean, you don't spend your life knocking on a door. you can knock until your hand falls off and it may never open.
Right.
So it's
Right.
it's all about creating your own opportunities.
Exactly.
And whatever that means. I mean, partnering. I mean, I think we're in an era right now where we're sitting in a room like this where there's so many different cultures in this room and so many opportunities within any kind of mixture of collaborations here. Stories of people who have discovered their genetic roots and go back. That could be a fascinating thing to explore. Or, we have in the United States a little bit of everything in the world. So, the old world versus the new world could be a fascinating story.
Absolutely.
That could be a drama or a comedy or both.
Absolutely. I was saying to you last night, I think the world would be a completely different place if everyone took a 23andMe test and you all would find out how much black you actually have in you, or you would be a mixture of things, and all of a sudden you would not be able to hold on to your righteous ethnicity. The world is a potpourri.
And it is. I mean, at the end of the day, ethnicity is a bit of a construct.
It's a construct.
I mean, the idea of white and black is kind of diminishing to all the details that go inside of those things.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And if anyway, we could go on about that. But I think it's almost time to see if the audience might have any questions for Mr. Lawson, or statements, declaration. Nothing. Oh, there we go. Please stand up and say your name and tell us your question.
My name is Gunnar Holman, actor from Sweden, and it was interesting you said that you don't know your background, because everyone tell me, oh, you can't be Swedish, you're supposed to be blonde and blue eyes. so
You're proving the point.
yeah. And maybe people think I'm French or Greek or Turkish or something like that. So maybe my ancestors are from there. I don't know.
People get around.
Yeah.
So go and find out.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna do a test, generic test and see.
Maybe that's another subject for a panel next year.
Yeah.
Because we all think we're one thing, and then
Yeah.
the truth comes out. I was certainly surprised when I saw what I was made of.
Yeah.
And it's okay, I can't really hate anybody because I'm everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm a human being anyway. That.
And then at the end of the day, there you have it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well.
Sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm finished. Yeah.
I thought you were Swedish, not Finnish. Yeah, my name is Sydney. I'm an actor, storyteller from Sweden as well. I'm not Swedish, as you can see. My question for you, Mr. Richard, is what is the legacy you want to leave for the afterworld? Because I think it's a lot of things, but is it something particular you're thinking about? This is what I will be remembered for. And this is important for me to especially for your students, to carry on.
Yes. I fashion myself as a dream weaver. My whole intention in life is to help people to realize their dreams. So that's the whole premise of my school. The first thing that happens there is, before I can teach you, is that the question is, what is your dream? And if I understand what your dream is, then I can help you to carve that out. And so I think one example of that for me, and really is kind of like a full circle moment, is that I have a class where I put a camera in people's hands and I teach them how to become filmmakers. Not to be the next Spike Lee or Ava DuVernay, but to be able to become a better artist. Because if you are a filmmaker and you are producing your own short little films, you'll never be late again. You'll always be on time. You'll be a better actor. You'll be a better storyteller, right? True. So 2 of my students.
Well, you're making such an important point. When you understand your place in the entirety of a production, thank you, it changes your level of respect for what's being done. No and you're not just saying it from my point of view, I'm in my trailer until you call me.
Right.
You understand the value of everything that's happening there,
You
and it's
understand
all telling the story.
Yes. In the old days, you know, the people who ran the studio started in the mailroom.
Right.
So they worked their way up to being the president of the company. And so the president of a company then understands how the whole dynamic works. So as an actor, if I understand the whole dynamic of it, if I'm producing my little short film and I ask you to be one of the actors and your call time is at 9 and you don't show up until 9:30, you basically are killing my day.
Everybody else is going to wait, and they're being
everybody's gotta
paid.
Wait, and if you break down the budget of a film and you look at the amount of time that you have to shoot that film, you can realize that that film costs X amount of dollars per minute. For every minute you're late, you are burning up money. So anyway, the two students who took classes 10 years ago, 6 years ago, now, and in that class, they originated a film. These two students have films that are showing here at Cannes. So the sense of satisfaction for me that I operated on do as I do, not as I say, but do as I do, follow me, they've done that. And if I can be of that influence where someone's life is better, where their dream has been realized because of what the influence is, then there's no greater satisfaction. And for me now, because of what I want to see happen with getting people into discussion about us as a people and how we go forward, is again, do as I do, and hopefully will be an influence for us as a people to be at cause over our own destiny.
A dream to a plan, and a plan to action.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
Last question. Oh, maybe we can do. Okay. You and then you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Lola Lee Thompson. I'm a Canadian filmmaker. So my question to you is, well, thank you for sharing all of this. My question is, I understand the process, being an actor, being a producer and all of that, and taking charge of your life. But then there comes a challenge of how do you find the money, even as a producer, to produce your work. And I guess some of the things you run into is, okay, I have a project, I'm trying to find the money, you're trying to, and you have to go through all the packaging phases and stuff like that. So what are the challenges that you face? How do you find the money? And I don't know if I'm asking too much of a question for you right now.
No, listen, it's a very important question.
Right. Because when you go to the market, then one of the things I find is even when you want to incorporate black people and you're talking to certain executives of stuff, then they tell you there's no market value, there's no market value. And then you're like, how do you overcome that?
Right. Keep looking. Just never give up. Never give up. Keep knocking on doors. There's no quit. There's no quit. Some projects take 10, 15 years. But if you're pregnant with your idea, then there is no stop. You have to be like water. Water, at the end of the day, is going to be the last thing on this planet because it's going to overcome anything. You have to be able to go around it, over it, through it. You come upon the China Wall. You don't let it stop you. It's just a challenge. Because if you're pregnant with this idea, if you understand the concept of it, that nothing is going to stop you. There is no. No is not an option. You just keep knocking on doors, turning over every single rock, and not being impatient about it. The problem with most people is that time becomes an issue because you think there's an expectation that you should have this tomorrow. Well, it may be next year or it may be next year, but you just don't give up.
And I want to add to that because I think there's oftentimes with the creative world, there is an absence of the responsibility that you actually need to educate yourself in finance. Because at the end of the day, you're asking people for millions of dollars, so you need to have some kind of an actual foundation that it gives you credibility. If you haven't bothered to study terminology or even go to seminars and really train yourself and or partner with somebody who actually understands wealth and how to use it and how to get it back. Because at the end of the day, the people want to know, I want a long-term partnership with you. So if you're going to handle my $1 million and you're going to bring me 1.5, we're talking again. If you come back to me and say, I'm sorry I lost your money because I didn't know what I was doing, we're done. And you also poison the well for every other independent filmmaker who is equally unprepared, because I'm not pointing at you, but I think that I had to learn that myself. It's like, this is my dream. Nobody gives a damn about my dream. What they want to know, their dream is getting the money back. So let's make both of those dreams match up. So if you're not ready, learn. I think, I don't know how much, because we have this question, I don't know if we have two more, but this gentleman.
Hi, my name is Cyril Julien. I'm French, and I run an advisory boutique in London. I used to live in the States in the 80s, and at the time, I felt that the US felt like one people, one nation. 30 years later, it feels like the US has never been as divided. There is lots of hatred. I mean, it feels like a nation at war with itself. And now, here's my question. When we feel that, and it's the same thing in France, that the word of politicians are so divisive, what should influential people, and I'm thinking in terms of top entertainers, actors, singers in Hollywood and in the rest of the US, who appear to have influence with the people that admire them, what should they be doing, or what could they be doing to bring the nation back together from the brink where it stands? Thank you.
Okay. There's a lot in that question. The first thing that I recognize is that you say in the 80s it felt like one nation together, undivided. And perhaps from your perspective, that's what you saw, but this nation has never had that. It's never been that, you know, one nation, undivided. We've been fighting for years in one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty, and that has never existed. But we know that. And so therefore, one of the most effective things in order to bring change and to bring togetherness on some level, or at least in groups, has been through art. Art is the most powerful communicator in the world, and it's immediate. And so therefore, through the use of art and through the use of storytelling, and then using all the other aspects of marketing, of having a reality about money and where money comes from, getting people to invest in your idea and to become as pregnant in your idea and your dream as you are, so that your project can make a difference and can do something to move the needle in terms of culture. The biggest problem today is that we have all these silos of beliefs, you know, and groups that are self-interested and serving their own interests. That's the biggest problem in terms of trying to, it's like, who are you communicating to? And maybe that group can become strong enough to influence and become bigger. And so I believe the answer is through art, that we can make a difference where we can. There's no one blanket way to do it. The thing that I'm trying to do is to get people in communication at least recognize what's in front of us so we can take responsibility to do something. And that's going to be a huge task in and of itself.
Hi, nice to meet you. And thank you for the conversation, Richard and Steven. My name is Yusuf. I'm an actor, French actor. Thank you for the advices and sharing your career. My question is, when will we can see your last film?
This is screening.
Yeah.
This is screening on the 23rd, next Tuesday, at the Pavilion Afrique, the African Pavilion, at 4 o'clock. You can see this film then. I don't know what you have to do for tickets or for admission. Maybe somebody can say, I don't know. But show up at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. Thank you. Thank you.
Simone. So introduce yourself.
Love is what we need upon us. Let them come together with the unity among us. Unity wise, it's a unity. Yeah, no, this a good world. You know what I'm
Umoja
saying?
ni nguvu, utengano udhaifu. Tukisimama jitoe uvivu, toke ni ubabaifu, brother utakwama. Kuwa mbali mbali sio kitu kizuri, inaleta upweke, hakuna jeuri. Ni rahisi kupata msaada ukiwa na wenzako, wetaka usimtenge dada. Kitangamana nawe, kuna wengine wataitika, nawe shikamana naye, itaondoa kusononeka.
You better know, let's be happy and love one another.
Itaondoa kusononeka.
That is over. What are we gonna do to make a change? So I'm trying to get over.
So our next session today is going to be on diversity and inclusion, and I believe our panelists are all here. My name is Simone McIntyre. I am the moderator. Here is Grace and Helen and Tonya. Not Helen, just Grace. Okay. So if everybody would like to take a seat so we can start the next session. Thank you very much.
That's a big question.
Tonya? Would you like to come to the front? Excuse me. Tonya, you coming up? Yes? No, you're next.
Well, there's a group of us, right?
Yes, there's Grace.
Oh, good.
And
Okay, there's a panel.
I think there's somebody missing. Let's go this way. Hi, I'm Simone.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I'm going to be asking some general questions
Sure.
and what your thoughts are, where we are at the moment with diversity and inclusion. Talk to me about your organisation.
Yeah?
You have Helen as well, right?
Yeah, she's not coming.
Oh, she's not coming?
No.
Would
Well, she's her flight isn't going to arrive on
Oh,
time.
that's a shame.
Yeah.
So, can you do it?
Hello guys, remember that we have a follow-up session right now all right, thank you very much. Please, thank you sir. I have to put plus one, right? Plus one, otherwise it won't go. Alright.
Oh yeah, you gotta do the plus.
And you put your email, if
Oh
you
yeah,
don't mind,
absolutely.
because we have a newsletter, alright, that goes. Plus this is actually live, and what else? I don't know, partner that we have, deadline.
It
and
was
sort of-
live?
Yeah, it was live. And you can go in that room. You see, we have a cocktail, a closing cocktail at the end of the day here, around 6:10 and whatnot. And we do like interviews that we have to sit here. We film it 10 minutes just to tell people, okay, what you do and so on and so forth, and we put it live too. All right. Thank you.
So I'm saying, it's a courtesy.
Tu nous as présenté. Thank you, sir. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, I did. Very much. Very much.
Are you okay? Is it going fine? So, guys, we are starting the next session. Can you please take your seat? All right. Is it okay? Have a smile. It's going to be cool. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. That's good. Ça va? Tu as eu ta question? Oui.
Ah ouais?
Tu sais si son film sera projeté mardi 4h?
Non, elle a dit le 23, je
Le
crois.
23?
À 16h.
Le 23 à 16h, d'accord.
Guys, please have a seat. We're going to start the next session. Thank you very much. Guys, please have a seat. We're going to start the next session. It's the girl. Did you enjoy the session?
It was very good.
Alrighty.
Yes.
Okay. So you're staying or you're going or because we still have some session on the
Yeah,
board?
no, I think I might stay. I know Leo's gonna be back and I'm gonna be on the next session.
Okay, no, look, it's home here. Okay,
Yes.
come back.
Oh,
when-
yeah, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Are you okay?
I'll bring you some glass. Of course, I'll bring you a glass. Is this one clean? This one is clean. Yes, absolutely. Yes. I'll bring you a glass. This one.
I think you have to speak loud.
Could I ask everybody to take a seat because we are now ready to start the next session? Okay. Are your names on the... Not yet. They haven't changed it yet? Perfect. You tell me when we're good to go? We're good to go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Simone McIntyre. I'm an actor and a producer from London. I'm joined today by Tonya Williams and Grace Maharaj. Did I say that correctly? Okay. And today we are going to be talking about diversity and inclusion, advocacy and support. So first of all, I would like you both to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your work. And there's another mic there, but you can also have this one.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, it's all good. Should I speak louder?
Louder,
Yeah?
yes.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah? Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here at the Afro event. It's just wonderful. So my background is this. I'm the Vice President of Women in Film International, Women in Film and Television in Sweden. Helene Granqvist was unfortunately delayed today, and she is the global president. She's also the Swedish president of WIFT International, Women in Film and Television International. So she's the global international president and the Swedish president. But I'm the vice president, and I'm also the a producer and writer for a company, a transmedia company, which I founded called Arvit Agency.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tonya Williams, and I've been an actress for the last 45 years. Moved to Los Angeles in 1987, and I was starring on a soap opera called The Young and the Restless from, what was the year was that now? 1990 to 2009. And then in 2000, I actually founded Reelworld, at the time Reelworld Film Festival. So we're now going into our 23rd year with that. And even though I live in LA, the organization, which is Reelworld Screen Institute now, is based in Toronto, Canada. And our focus has always been, and will continue to be, only Canadian talent who are Black, Indigenous, meaning First Nation, Métis, Inuit, Asian, South Asian, and other people of color. And we've done a number of things. Our festival is coming up November 1st to the 7th in Toronto, Canada. And we have screenwriting programs, we have producer programs, we have a casting director program, agent programs, manager program. We have lots of programs. A couple of the delegates we brought 9 delegates to Cannes with us, and we just continue to work on equity and inclusion and diversity.
Thank you. Could you both tell us a little bit about how your organizations are positioned to promote diversity and inclusion and your specific strategies?
All right. Well, I can say from the perspective of women and film and television in Sweden, Women in Film and Television was founded in the 70s in Los Angeles as a protest to what was going on in Hollywood at the time in terms of gender parity and equity. Not much has changed, but we've come a little bit better, but we're still talking about the same things, right? So in Sweden, it was founded in 2003 by 2 women who, wanted to continue the work that was inspired already in the 70s in the USA. I came on board, and it's funny that Helene Granqvist, the global president of WIFT International, isn't here because, she asked me at a film festival a year and a half ago, Grace, we want you to come on board. We want you to be a member of WIFT. And I actually said no. My first gut response was no. And the reason why I said no was because I didn't see any diversity representation. I didn't see people like me. I didn't see, any room for that, and I didn't see any development for that. And I was very clear with Helene, and she knew this, which is why she asked me. She says,
"So you didn't think you could make a difference at that time? Is that the
well,
main?"
I mean, make a difference, but I also felt a little bit. Yeah, I guess so. I think there was a sense of helplessness, right? Because I should also say that I am based in Sweden. My journey has come far. I was born in Fiji, I grew up in New Zealand, and I ended up in Stockholm, Sweden. So it's a long story there. So from a Nordic lens perspective and working in the film industry for the last 30 years, not much has changed for me, if you like. So then being asked to be a part of a non-profit organization for women working in the audio and visual industry in Sweden, I wasn't attracted to it because I just felt like, well, yeah, but where are we? But Helene really put it back to me, and she said, you can make a difference. And I'd been around now for quite some time in Sweden, being a pain in the neck to a few people, opening doors and bringing my own chair and making my own table. And I realized, yeah, I actually have something to contribute. And when I looked at it that way, I thought, yes, I think it's time for me. I have some experience, I've grown up, and I can be of service to an organization that is in need of some restructuring when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and supporting those values. And to Helene Granqvist's credit, she knows that, and she knew that. So, you know, she's a powerhouse in her own right in Sweden and in the international community when it comes to film and television. And she saw this, and she opened the door. She opened the door for me, which allowed me to open the door for others. So I think it takes, you know, it takes a person like someone like Helene to share that power, to share that knowledge, and to invite others to be a part of making those changes. And I mean, it's about innovative thinking, right? And innovative thinking means inclusion, and it means a new way of thinking, a new design system that has always been a barrier that's been there, and be ready to take it down. And she did that, and she did that by including me in it, and I said yes.
Excellent.
And for me, you know, I was in Toronto, Canada, and I made the move to Los Angeles in 1987, and I had been doing things in Canada, but we weren't organized in any way. There wasn't a sense of how we could get these things done. But one of the things I learned being in Los Angeles is seeing how, especially the Black community galvanizes, the Latino community galvanizes. I just learned so much watching how they worked in Hollywood, to tell you the truth. And when I would go back to Canada then, I started being that voice of what I was seeing happening in Los Angeles. And that's really the birth of, before I started Reelworld, I would sit in a lot of advocacy work, and would sit with the government of Canada and Telefilm and Canadian Media Fund, and we would talk about changes that need to happen. So I was already doing that, but I was really inspired by they're just, you know, I just learned so much in LA. And then when I started Reelworld, that just became a whole learning curve for me. I ended up leaving Young and the Restless because I loved doing that, but working at Reelworld was consuming more and more of me. And 9 years in, I was like, oh, this is full time. I have no other energy for anything else. And you know, it takes a lot of energy, and I think people, it's very hard because most people are in their own career trajectory. They're trying to become actors, they're trying to become filmmakers, they're trying to become producers. You're on your own journey, and you really find, oh, I'm not getting anywhere. And so you, even whether you want to or not, you become the advocate for other people. But then it sucks up all your creative energy. It really does. You feel like, I don't have the energy to make a film. I don't have the energy to write anything. I don't have the energy to act in anything. So there are people who have to make sacrifices, and where you are right now might be you making those sacrifices for others to have those opportunities, because someone has to stop and go, you know what, I'm just going to create that space. And invite others in and help nourish them and nurture them and move them forward. But I think that's where it started for me. And I do say to other people when they're like, you know, in my town, there's nothing there and there's nobody there, I go, there's you. Yeah. So you better start, or nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, thank you. So how do both of your organizations go about engaging key decision makers to be on board with what you want to achieve?
Well, again, I can say I'm a member of the board. I'm the vice president of WIFT, and that in itself was a key decision in terms of representation, and you know, another lens, another perspective on what is predominantly has been a mostly white Caucasian, European Caucasian board, as it is in the Nordics and in many institutions, with you know, in a non-profit organization or a formal power structure. So again, you know, to make those changes, it's also about, let's put people from diverse backgrounds, from ethnic you know, backgrounds, which are not the majority, making in decision-making spaces. But I have to say that it's very important to put people who have the capabilities. It's not about tokenism. And I think this here we have to be very careful to really be absolutely honest here and really put people in the right places for the right reasons and for the right skills. Because if I fail, or if one of us fails and we don't have the right capacity, then unfortunately the whole thing fails. We all fail as a concept, as a practitioner, as you know, the everything falls. So for me, it's very important to make sure that, you know, when we meet with others and we ask for, you know, advocacy, when we support advocacy work, that we really make sure that they are the right people in the right places with the right skill sets.
Thank you.
This is great because that is a great way to work. It's not the way I work, but it is a great way to work. So my way was, I founded something. Now you were being part of something that's a brand already. WIFT is an international name. Everybody knows it, and you know, you're expanding on this amazing brand. I leveraged the celebritism that I had, the currency that I had from 1977 when I started working to 2000. That's a lot of years. I was already in my 40s when I started Reelworld, so I knew a lot of the players in Canada. I was able to go right to them and sit with Telefilm and go, this is the thing I really want to do. I need some financing funding for this. In fact, I'm putting in $100,000. So what can you do? Then I went to broadcasters. I'd known them for forever. I'd worked. I was on a sitcom in Canada on CTV, so I went to Bell, who owns CTV, and I said, I need some funding, you know, for this. So I grew it that way. But one of the things I noticed was a whole bunch of white people wanted to be with me. Whole bunch of, we want to be on your board, and they were impressive names, by the way, because I'd known people for so long, and I went, no. Because a long time ago, I think I read somewhere, how you want to end your journey is how you should take your first step. And I needed it to not look like white people were saving us. I needed it to look like our community was coming together and we were gonna build something. So everyone on my board had never been on a board. There was nobody with any of the skill sets I needed. So I got people, and today people will come up and go, you were the first board I ever sat on. But then they got asked to be on other boards, and that was the plan. I couldn't find people who'd ever worked at a film festival before when I started a film festival. We had to train programmers for the first time, and now at TIFF, I see people that went, I got my start at Reelworld, 23 years ago, because that was my long-term plan. So I took the hard road. When people were like, oh, I know this publicist, I go, are they Asian? Are they South Asian? Are they black? Are they indigenous? No, they're white. No. So I would get someone who'd never done publicity before or had done it once and wasn't even very good. But nobody's ever good when you start. They got better, and then they got hired by other people. And so I see, for Reelworld, it's not an end game for me. The journey was very important, and at every step, and to this day, I still only hire, even when it's the hard way, and it is the hard way. And the worst thing is, I hire people, I train them, and then other people steal them. So that's become frustrating for me in the last few years. But I still see it as a positive thing. But yeah, building your team, there's two ways of doing it. It's like finding just the best people, and then there's finding the people you want to help and training them up to be the best people. That's another way.
Can I just add something to that? Thank you. That was wonderful. Because I just wanted to say that, again, I have to go back to Helene, because when WIFT started in Sweden in 2003, there was a barrier to entry, and that was that women in working in the Swedish film and television industry had to have at least 2 years merits. And so when Helene became president, she just said, we're not going to do it. We're going to let anyone that is, whatever they want, whatever they're working with, you are welcome. So she really opened the door wide to include everybody. And I also want to just say that when I got asked to be, the board member of WIFT in Sweden, Helene actually said, because she understood that there was such a lack of diversity, the initial plan was, let's initiate let's just initiate a BIPOC WIFT, right? So good intentions. But and I thought about this a while, and I thought, you know what, we're not going to do that. It's just WIFT, right? Because the moment we, and I know what she was saying. She was saying, I want us to be more inclusive. What do we have to do? And I said, what we have to do is just keep on advocating and supporting and making sure that we reach out to, you know, women of color in our film industry in the Nordics and pull them in and say, you are welcome, and give them the feeling and support that they are welcome and feel confident that they belong also as members of WIFT. And I just want to say that she was here, I think, yesterday. She was speaking, Isra Ekogali Hegström. She is a member of WIFT and a new member of WIFT, and she's a co-producer, and her film is here in the Uncertain Regard, Goodbye Julia, which is the first Sudanese film in the Cannes Film Festival. And for us, we are so proud of that. We are here to support her and advocate for her, and that's, you know, when we see her coming from Sweden with Sudanese heritage, for us, that is, you know, that's proof of our continued work and advocacy as a grassroots organization.
So really, just to put up on what you just said, so really creating a BIPOC WIFT, you feel like would have diluted the mission?
Yeah, absolutely. It would have marginalized us. We wouldn't be integrated as a mainstream film industry, and that is absolutely important. Because I think the more we're marginalized, it's just really easy to just put it as a side issue. You know, we are, you know, a diverse country. Sweden is incredibly diverse and multicultural, and we need to, you know, really integrate and, you know, in every way that we work, it needs to be part of our everyday mainstream life and not a side issue.
I was going to say to that, and every country is going to be different, because what works in Sweden that way, we do segregate in Canada because it's of more value for us. We get a lot of funding from the government. Not just Reelworld. There are lots of pies of money that have existed now, which has helped our industry. It helped. We now have the Indigenous Screen Office, which started 5 years ago. I helped co-found the Black Screen Office, which is now in its second year. And these are organizations that are getting funding, which help filmmakers get funding. Reelworld has been advocating. We just got $1.4 million last year for the training of Black casting directors, agents, and managers. So it works in Canada that way. It may not work. I have cousins who are Danish. It would not work the same way in Denmark. You know, so you have to navigate and figure out what works for your country and for your community.
Can I just add on to that? That's a really good point, because I mean, in the Swedish film and television industry, there is that type of, you know, pathway to make it easier, but you know, what we are seeing, there's a stop, right? You're not totally integrated into the mainstream, right? And therefore, there are still knowledge gaps, there are still experience gaps, there are still visibility gaps that is preventing our filmmakers from BIPOC backgrounds to come in. And really, you know, there is unfortunately a different sense of values. I mean, a director, and this is also about, you know, between men and women, you know, a male director will get a bigger budget, will get a bigger marketing, will get bigger media presence than a female director, regardless of color, and then you break it down. It's all intersectional, right? So, I mean, there you can really break it down into different layers and see, you know, where the interest is and who's getting the most of what and how. So, I mean, it's something that we continue to work with.
You know, sorry, as you said that too, I like us not to focus, I talk in Canada all the time about this, I don't want us to just focus on writers, producers, directors, and actors. Because yes, there's a certain power, but it's not the power. So we also work about getting people of color as executives in the already existing broadcasters. I am championing, I mean, but all this I really learned more from the States. I mean, watching someone like an Oprah Winfrey, watching a Will Smith, watching a once I noticed with Americans in particular, once one hits, there's a collective group that comes not just to hang off, but to push them even further because it rises all those other people up. So then pretty soon they've got, like Tyler Perry has sound stages and studios in Georgia. You know, they start building, we don't have that. They start building, we need our own television networks, we need our own distribution companies, we need our own, you know, we need a lot of stuff. And then we need to attract the people of color who have funding, the financiers and whatever. They need to be financing the people. So it's a whole ecosystem that we have to be thinking about to make things happen.
Coming from a UK perspective, we've seen a lot of changes in how things are for us, particularly though on screen. So when I was younger, you would usually only see a black woman as a nurse, as a cleaner, and now it comes up and up and up. But I know that behind the camera, we're still really behind. There's so much to be done. So I wanted to know from both of your perspectives, where is the support most specifically lacking and needed, and the focus, you know, specifically needed to be on?
I can answer that from my experience as a writer-producer in Sweden. I founded my company called Arvid Agency in 2021. I've been in the business as an established screenwriter in Sweden for many years with 3 features and documentaries. And over these 30 years, I can tell you that I have not met one person of color in a decision-making position. And I realized, and I was really, and it really bothered me. In fact, during Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter movement, global movement, and when it came to Sweden, I had just finished a law degree. And I sort of wasn't expecting to come back into the business. I was double-minded. I'm always a writer. I mean, a writer is always a writer. You're always writing, right? So I felt like, damn, I was just like, what have we changed? And I was thinking from the perspective of narratives, right? From Nordic narratives. And the Black Lives Matter movement in Sweden was a really big and powerful movement because for the first time there was visibility to Afro Swedes, you know, in our country and their stories and their narratives that weren't getting the visibility and the platform which was required. And for me, I'm a storyteller, right? So, and then I was a storyteller with a degree that I had for 3 minutes as a lawyer. So I'm like thinking, well, what am I going to do, right? So, but I knew the gaps already being part of the business that was there. And when you talk about, what is the perspectives today? So for me, it was like, well, if we want to have visibility and change those narratives, then somebody has to be in that position, which is what you're talking about. So I reluctantly started my company. And I knew that the only way to own the narrative is by acquiring intellectual property rights. So I acquired a book called A Drop of Midnight. My company acquired a book called A Drop of Midnight by a well-known Swedish-American rapper, Jason Diakita. He's known as Timbuktu. And this was a huge thing because Jason's family come from the United States. His father is a well-known civil rights activist, Madubuko Diakita. And this story was about Jason Diakita's book, life story with, his family moving to America, to Sweden, and his perspective of growing up in Sweden during the 80s and 90s, and him coming into becoming one of Sweden's most iconic rappers, and his journey with racism, discrimination, and the civil rights activism in Sweden. And this was a very big step for me because it was the first time, and Jason has been around for a long time. He's very famous in Sweden. No one, not one single producer had acquired the rights to his book. And I'm like thinking, how is this possible?
My goodness.
Right? Yeah. He is iconic. And and it was available. So we took it. We took it and we developed it, and now Warner Brothers Sweden is producing it with Arvid Agency. And I mean, this is how we make change. I mean, this happened over a 5-year period. We don't even know if we're going to get a green light. Right now, it's sitting with the Swedish the Swedish Television Broadcasting Agency, which is like the BBC. So I mean, we just hope to God that they will say yes, because it is an important story. It's a story about an Afro-Swede's journey. He's American, he's Afro-Swedish as well, and it's this, it's a tale that we haven't heard and we haven't seen. But I have to say, when we were talking to other producers about this, they were like, so Jason's parents are American? Yeah. So this script is in English? Well, yes, because Jason's parents speak to him in English, but Jason is also bilingual. Yeah, but, we have to make the parents speak Swedish. And I said, absolutely not. His parents speak to him in English, like I speak to my children in English, because that's my first language. No, but we need to make them speak Swedish. But why? And I mean, that kind of discussion just tells you that there is still this prejudice, there's still this need to sort of shape a narrative to fit an audience that is not by a producer, by a commissioning producer, who's not prepared to accept this is the situation, this is the reality.
Authenticity there.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
5 years ago, your question about women and women of color, I would say they weren't that many.
Right.
But now we surpass the men, for sure.
Wow.
Men of color come up to me all the time. They're like, you guys have it so easy. I'm like, yes, it's been an easy road for women and black women in particular, just an easy road. I'm like, stop whining. But it's at CBC now. They've made after George Floyd, there was just a reckoning that happened in Canada. Mm-hmm. It was literally people who had been funding Reelworld for 20 years. They were like, what is your organization doing? Because it was like they just really realized, we were funding these people, but only because, we wanted to be kind. Oh, but now you're relevant. Now we get it. Lot of executives were brought on, people who had been producing things for a long time, people, like at your level, all of a sudden broadcasters were like, we want to bring you in as executives, so people got moved up. All the broadcasters now have a lot of indigenous people and women and black women and Asian women just sort of moving up in the ranks. And when you think that my organization, and it's a film festival, there is Fabienne Collis out of Quebec. She's got 9 film festivals now in Canada, of all like Toronto Black Film Festival, Nova Scotia Black Film Festival, Vancouver Black Film Festival, it's like Calgary Black Film Festival. She's got all these festivals. Frances Ann has Caribbean Tales. All these women created things, and they created them a while back, but now they're like so well skilled that other people are looking for their advice and sort of how to move the needle forward. But everywhere I look, in the Tracy Deer, who's indigenous, is doing so much within the community, making so much content. So it is really rich in Canada right now for women, particularly who are indigenous and racialized.
Do you think that's something that's going to continue to grow, or is something that's more like a flavor of the month at the moment?
I would normally think it's a flavor of the month,
Right.
except most of these women have been around for like 20, 15, 10 years, like building big careers.
Right.
And now that they've been put in the spotlight, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. They are making content, and it's going out. It's not just going to go away. Right now, they're trying to move themselves internationally. And so that's going to change the game. As so many of them are here at Cannes, and they're making relationships, co-productions. Canada has wonderful co-production treaties with over 60 countries. UK, Sweden's probably, one of them. Denmark, Norway, Australia, France. It's so many. So they're here leveraging that, taking advantage of that.
Unfortunately, I don't think Sweden is part of that treaty yet. But I just want to say, because I'm so inspired, and I just want to also mention that the Sami International Film Institute, in Sweden, the indigenous Sami story has never had the kind of visibility that it should have had over the years, right? And certainly from the perspective of the Swedish government. But I can say this, and this is the irony, and this is why you should never, the wolf is in, what is it, the sheep's in, what is it?
Sheep in wolf's
Yeah,
clothing.
exactly.
Wolf in sheep's clothing.
What I want to say is this. So it took an American company, Netflix, to come to Sweden and sign a treaty with the Sami indigenous filmmakers to make it possible for them to be integrated in and to be included in the value, the film value chain. It took an American company to come to the Nordics to include the indigenous people of Sweden. And this says a lot. This says how much work we have to do, how much advocacy there still, there is. But that's what I'm saying. It took an American company to make it possible for an indigenous people's stories to be finally seen through treaties. So it's interesting.
My word.
Thank God for Netflix, though, really. They have just, we know they're making a lot of money off everybody, but their careers are moving forward.
Yeah.
And I just have to say that because for me and our company, we're a small little outfit, but we have big ambitions. We couldn't do this without the streamers in the Nordics. It's made it possible for us to come through. It's made it possible for us to have access. And this was not possible in the old system that has been part of the business landscape for forever.
My eyes have been open to Nigerian content, to Norwegian content, to Icelandic content, I'm just watching Korean, dramas. It's just great content out there. And it's inspiring to see that.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the successes of both of your organizations and the ripple effect that they've had with the work that you've achieved?
Start since I have the mic. But because it's been 23 years, we couldn't have lasted without being able to brag about successes that we made. That's what makes funders come back. But yeah, many of the people that started out 23 years ago, they're working at Richie Mehta with someone, he's now living in the UK and doing very well there as a producer and director. And so many of the people that have come through our programs, it's phenomenal to watch, actually, because you have no idea the impact until you start seeing their content everywhere. And they're sending me emails going, remember when my very first short was at Reelworld, and now I'm screening at Cannes. Now I'm at, Berlinale. Now and I'm in LA, and I just got my first look deal. And, that we have a thing called face-to-face where we set people up, and it's almost like speed dating, but for producers to pitch. And they'll go, that pitch 5 years ago, that only just came, we just got all our financing together, and it was from that first person that we met. So we hear those things all the time, and that's what actually keeps you motivated and keeps you going.
Absolutely, and I can definitely build on that and say from Women in Film and Television Sweden, we have a stipendium called the Anna Prize. And the Anna Prize has, it's a small stipendium. It's together with the Swedish Film Institute and UN Women, and we have minority partners. But the prize is really to give seed funding to filmmakers. Everyone is able, we of course would love you to be members, but it's open to all in Sweden, including men. And the prize asks you to align to the CEDAW Convention, the Convention Against Women, the Convention Against Discrimination Against Women. I've just shortened it a little bit there, but it's for filmmakers, and it has seeded filmmakers. We have a documentary filmmaker that's here in Cannes that Anna Prize, started. She started her journey on the Anna Prize. We managed that, we've seeded funding for first-time debut directors. So we see our value and we see our contribution, and it just makes us incredibly proud and gives us, the reason why to continue to do what we're doing.
You're empowering to empower. I think we got to take some questions.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say though that I was just going to say quickly that money is key. In the last 2 years, we've been able to give the outstanding film at Reelworld $25,000 cash. Short film, $10,000 cash. We couldn't have done that 10 years ago. If we gave you $500, would have been thrilled. So that just shows the change in the progression.
Thank you. Jump down. And just quickly say your name.
Yes, once again. My name is Sydney. I'm an actor and storyteller and documentary filmmaker from Sweden. And first of all, thank you for all the great work you've been doing. My question is for you, Grace, because here's the thing. The situation is very complex in Sweden. I come from the other side. Just a fast one. Sweden is very discriminating against women, but also against age and against BIPOC and against a lot of other things. Anyways, I'm a man, so I can't talk, but I can talk for my female friends. There's a lot of all the things you're asking for, directors, screenwriters, BIPOC in Sweden. But we were discriminated by our names because it's a big diaspora in Sweden that are discriminated, that people don't think about, and that's the adopted people, like me, I'm adopted, because we have Swedish name. So in the process, it stops even there. If I apply for your grant for your scholarship, I get stopped by my name. Why? Because I have a Swedish name. And most of us adopted in Sweden, we are indigenous as well, especially South American, because people don't expect us to be indigenous. And all respect for Timbuktu, but that story been around for long in our adopted community, because we are the experts in Sweden when it comes to racism, actually, not the immigrants with adopted, because we were in different generations, unfortunately. So my question is, because all of my friends, also the female, they don't know about this. How will your organization work, especially for my female friends? How will you work to increase the knowledge and to open more doors? Because if you ask from outside of point of view, with all due respect, the door's always been closed and is still closed. Even if we, of course, are grateful for all the work you've been doing. But that's because it's a very complex situation, particularly in Sweden. It's a very complex country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And absolutely a good question. I totally agree with you. I'm assuming you're asking about women in film and television. And I mean, for us, the visibility is absolutely important. And where we are is absolutely important, and how we are. And, it's always a process. And for us, it's about, I can say that now we are certainly, in Sweden, I think I can be completely honest and say that when it comes to grassroots organization with women as like the members, and I should also say that we are, this is also, when I say women, we're talking women plus, we're also talking transgender and non-binary. Let's just be really clear about that. And as far as visibility is concerned, that's our challenge, and that's one of our main aims, is to be everywhere we possibly can, and encourage, be active in social media, and encourage those for us who are members to be out, to have outreach and to invite people into events and that. But also, WIFT is working with distributors, grassroots distributors in Sweden, so that we are working, together with filmmakers and distributing not films, but working with distributors and their films to also include the film community and the grassroots community, filmmakers, formally and informally. So I agree with you. We have a lot to do.
Even though I know nothing about the subject, I thought I would pitch in anyway. Okay. But, You know, one of the things when you start an organization or you work for an organization is you learn very quickly you cannot be all things to all people. In Toronto alone, there are over 180 film festivals in a city of 2 million people. And each festival has a very specific focus. The same with a lot of the screen industries across Canada. What you just said, I thought, oh my God, you should start an organization for this particular thing. Because I think things move quicker when an organization is honed into something very specific. And I have never heard of this, and I think no one is doing this, and I think you should start something that is specific to that, rather than try and have another organization add that in with, because I get a lot of people that come to Reelworld and they go, just had this conversation all the time with people, you know, we have disabilities, and I go, I strongly support disabilities, and if you start something, I will donate to your disabilities. But for us, you need to be Black, Indigenous, Asian, South Asian, people of color with disability to be in our, you know, what we're fighting for. So I encourage more people to start, you know, start all those things you see that are not there, make those happen.
Does that, yeah? Do you wanna?
It's okay, I'll try.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ayaloba. Okay, no problem. All right, then I will use the microphone. Hello. Yes, perfect. Hi, first and foremost, thank you so much for your insight. And it's been truly inspiring, and I'm going to take away a lot today. By the way, my name is Ayaloba. I'm Austria, Nigeria based. And so I wanted to ask you, the problem I see right now at the moment is like just now, I don't know how many weeks, for several weeks now, there's been the whole Screen Guild Writers' strike and demonstrations, and we all know that it's affected the film industry. And now with the vertical alignment of AI being brought into the whole equation, I wanted to know, what do you think you can do to safeguard or preserve diversity and inclusion with the increasing of the AI? Because many people are losing their jobs, top tiers, you know, everyone is affected. You know, we don't need 20 people writing a story. We just prompt and tell the AI to do that. But we can have the writer's mind and creation, and the film enterprises and networks, like Netflix and all those film companies, are the ones who have the intellectual property. So my question is, what do you think you can do to preserve and safeguard? Yeah. Well, okay, thank you.
Well, I mean, I say I want to answer, but I have no answer. But I can say this: common sense must prevail, right? When it comes to, I'm a writer, and certainly from the Swedish perspective, who is in your writer's room? Who is asking those questions? Who is going to have the courage to ask the right questions is absolutely important, right? When it comes to AI, I can say this. As people of color, it is absolutely our imperative right now to learn everything we possibly can to get on top of that. Because if we don't, right, if we don't understand how this is going to affect us, we are going to be the losers all the time when it comes to technology. And I think, and I say this as a person of color, but I also say this as an artist, right? And we know that as artists, generally, we just don't like to do business. We don't want to know anything about it. It is absolutely imperative, right, as an artist to learn the bloody business. If you are going to play football, you need to know the rules of the game. The same thing with film and television industry. And even more crucial now with technology such as AI, we must learn and we must push down those barriers that is stopping us from gaining the knowledge that we need to be a part of knowing. Now, what you do with that knowledge is completely another question, right? But it is absolutely our responsibility to make sure that we are in those rooms, that we have a voice. So before even AI, we need to start working, you know, from the decision-making level. Who is the writing? Who are the writers? What is the story? you know, as far as showrunners are concerned, you know, especially I think in the European, I think in the Canadian and North America territories, it's much better. It's much more aligned. But I certainly believe that, you know, I can say the Nordics, we're far, far behind, you know, and this is going to be a problem. And we need to be really vocal about making sure that our voices are present in those stories, and how we're telling those stories, and who is telling those stories, and how those stories are representing us. Yeah.
I love that. You have two great people up here because that is the optimistic answer, and I loved it. I am a pessimist. So, you know, there's people in New Orleans, and every year the ocean is rising and it floods them, and then FEMA comes and helps them rebuild in the same location and makes the levee taller, and the ocean comes and it crushes everything, and then they rebuild, and I'm like, move them out. You're not gonna stop the ocean. The ocean is coming, so move them somewhere else. Technology is gonna shift and change. We don't even know. 5 years from now, you and I will be doing Can from our living room. We don't know what the future is at all, but be prepared that it will not look like this. It will not be whatever you think it is. Remember, there was radio, and they thought, oh, that's it. Nobody's going to read books anymore. Then there was television, and then we're like, oh, nobody's going to listen to radio anymore. And as things happen, there's always a fear, but it also brings something new. So we don't know what the new thing is, because I can't even think. I'll be dead by the time AI makes that much of a sort of a difference. But for you young people, as she said, learn it all, because whatever that skill set is might not be useful 10 years, 20 years from now. So learn the other kind of skill sets that are going to be valuable. Somebody's got to run those computers. So someone has to be pedaling the bicycle for the energy to run through the computers. They'll always need people, but it may not look or be in the same way. But to ask those questions is to say, you know, what is the meaning of life and where will the future be? We don't know anything. In fact, maybe it all reverts. Maybe AI crashes the planet and we start from scratch, scratching out our scripts on stone with our, we don't know.
I mean, absolutely. And can I just say,
really quickly,
by all means, learn the game of football and know the rules, and please break them.
On that note, I would like to say thank you both, Grace and Tonya, for joining us today. That was a really enjoyable discussion.
Even though we won't answer them, let's just hear what the other questions were, because I'm curious. We won't answer them. We just have to hear. We're not going to answer them.
One is that we have actually another session coming up, all right? But, all right, if the question is short and the answer is...
We're not answering.
We're not answering. Ask the question.
We just want to hear the questions.
He needs the mic.
We have no answers.
You're just faking it before, so we might as well just hear your questions.
So let's be brief.
Yes.
Starting with the young gentleman.
Yeah. And then the lady, and then that gentleman.
Thank you. Hi. I'm Cameron. Nice to meet you. You see, it's funny because... Oh, yeah. You see, it's funny because when someone, for example, has his knowledge, you have knowledge, okay, you can be black. You said things didn't change behind the camera, and there is not a lot of person which are in position to be a leader, and in particularly a black leader. But when you met, and I'm speaking about my own experience, when you met a black leader, and when you have this knowledge, even our own community is not listening us. And for example, I met someone who is in charge, who is the CEO of a very famous radio in France and in the African continent. He didn't even listen to me, and I have the knowledge of Web3 technology, AI technology. I'm black, I'm Métis. I mean, we're supposed to all support, you know, each other. But even in our own community, things didn't change. So it's really good. Okay, I agree, obviously, with all of what you're saying. Things need to change, but if our own community is not supporting each other, it didn't work. Even if there is the new generation. If we don't help new generation, it's not going to change. Never.
No, stop. I know.
Can I just say that we're all leaders, right? Every single one of us are leaders, regardless of where we are, what we're doing, exactly. So I just want to say that, but yeah.
Hello. Whoa. I don't really need this microphone. Yeah. I don't need it. Okay, my name is Wale Ojo. I'm an actor, producer, and you know, I've always believed in the power of women. Always, okay? I was brought up by a very strong woman. My mother was an actress, and in bringing up, she turned me into an actor. You know, I've always believed in the wisdom of women. And from an ancient, even religious point of view, I believe in Mother Earth and sky is a woman, okay? that is standard. And I just wanted to, something is happening within the creative world at the moment, which I believe is a little dangerous. And I want you, especially you, Khedija, because it's from your part of the world. This story about the Black Cleopatra, okay? Now, what's happening is the Egyptian world is trying to rewrite history and saying Cleopatra was never black. Now, my issue is this. It doesn't matter if she was black, white, red, ebony, polka dot, green, yellow, blue. The fact of the matter is we need to understand that when we say black woman, she exists across a lot of aspects, okay? And if you're talking about Egyptian dynasties, if you go back to the 25th dynasty, there was a whole row of black Egyptian queens. And so this must be a part of the storytelling. It's a very strong part of the African narrative. Because if we keep going into this mindset, that, oh, only Elizabeth Taylor can play Cleopatra, we're in trouble. You know, and the essence of the black woman comes a lot from Egypt. Because if we think about it, they migrated from northern Sudan. The spiritual home of Egypt is Thebes. Thebes was located in Sudan, in the Pekul Bakal. Sorry, I'm going into detail now. But it was from there that it was migrated from the 25th dynasty and ruled Egypt for over 100 years. It's the rule of the black pharaohs, okay? But those black pharaohs, nothing without the women. Absolutely nothing. So that's a story that I really want to tell. So, and I think we all should tell that story because it's important that the younger generation know that story and know that history. It's very important.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, Grace and Tonya. And I've really enjoyed this discussion today. I will say I'm Simone, not Khedija, so I'm British, Jamaican. However, I do know the actress who played her, and we have similar heritage, so maybe, yeah. But thank you, everybody, and thank you for your wonderful questions and contribution today.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so the next station is starting in 5 minutes.
Love is what we need upon us. Let them come together with the unity among us. Unity wise, it's a unity. Yeah, no, this a good world. You know what I'm saying?
Ni nguvu, utengano udhaifu, tukisimama jitoe uvivu, utoke ni ubabaifu, brother utakwama. Kuwa mbali mbali sio kitu kizuri.